What's happening, guys? Kenny here again, and today I've got another Apex review for you. And what knife that's going to be about today is this guy. That's right, folks. This is the Civivi Elementum, and this is in D2 steel and black ebony handle scales, I believe is what they call these. And like I said, this is going to be an Apex review. And if you guys don't know what my Apex reviews are all about, I do have a video talking about my approach with these, and I'll go ahead and link it in the description. But basically, this is just, I'm part of the Apex Pass Around group. These reviews are going to be somewhere in between a first impressions and my hype versus reality comprehensive review. So I do get to do some cutting with these, but not as extensive as, like my hype versus reality, where I have the knife over months and months of time and constantly carry and sharpen the knives. These don't get sharpened. So yeah, I just get that kind of first impressions with some use, So in saying that, I'm going to get right into this today, guys. Like I said, this is the Civivi Elementum, and this is an in-house design from Wii. So if you guys don't know, Civivi is Wii's, that's their budget line, essentially. And they've been doing some really cool stuff. I have had, for instance, the Backlash. The Civivi Backlash does have an excellent grind. It's just a really excellent budget option knife. So I was really intrigued by Civivi right off the bat, and I wanted to try some more of their designs. So in saying that, once I saw this guy come into the Apex Pass Round, I was pretty excited to try and get that in hand. First off, I'm going to talk about size comparisons, and I'm also going to do some specs. I'll go ahead and throw those on the page right here. I don't want to waste your guys' time and spew off a bunch of numbers, so I'll go ahead and get it out of the way doing this. And then I'll bring you guys back, and we'll do some size comparisons. First things first, I'll bring in some Benchmates. I've got the Bug Out. This is with the Jade G10 scales from Flytanium, but I dyed them, of course. And then here's Mini Griptilian. This is the upgrade version with G10 scales and 20 CV. And you can see it's a relatively similar size knife, just a little bit shorter in overall length, whereas the Bug Out is obviously a larger knife. Here's some Spydercos coming in. We got the Para 3. This is the Knife Center exclusive with Smooth G10 and CPM crew wear. Of course, the Para 3 is a slightly larger knife, and then I'll bring in this is the Native 5 Salt with LC200N. Of course, I have my modification on this with the acid etch and handle scale dyeing. The Native is a very, very similar size knife, very similar, so, at least in overall length. But cutting edge, you'll get a little bit more out of the Elementum. But that's a very good size comparison. And I'll bring in a few more. We've got some Ray Laconico knives here, and both are really good size comparisons. This is the EWC. I'm not sure who the manufacturer is, but distributed by MBK, Monterey Bay Knives. And then this is also by Monterey Bay Knives, designed by Ray Laconico. This is the Min Pin. Both are very, very similar size knives. And I feel like the Elementum kind of falls into that size range where it's just really, really nice EDC carry, very pocketable, very good size, and usually going to be within your your legal limits wherever you might be, as long as you don't have any locking blade type of stipulations. But I got two more to bring in here. One being the CRK Small Sabenza, which is another knife that really just nails the size comparison. And then last but not least, another Wii collaboration. Well, this is a collaboration, but another Wii knife, which is the Fair & Forge Gent. This is collaboration with Drop as well. a very, very similar size knife. Also manufactured by although this is for drop. This one is for Civivi, obviously. Just one of their budget line knives. And then, but yeah, as far as size comparison, they are pretty much dead on as far as length goes. And even cutting edge, very similar cutting edge, even blade profile, to be honest. But these are very similar, and I'm actually going to do a lot of comparing between these two, so I'm just going to leave him on the table for now. We'll get rid of the CRK. I'm going to put this guy up in the corner over here, but we're going to talk about the Elementum here for a second and forget about this guy. But first things first, with the Apex review, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the aesthetics. Obviously, this is the most subjective part of this review, and aesthetics definitely come down to, it's really our own prerogative here, you know. It's really just our own preference. So, in saying that, this thing was definitely something that caught my eye. It's a very simple design. The lines are very round. It's very smooth. Everything lines up very well. The curves of the knife are very smooth. And overall, I really do think it's a good looking knife. I don't think it's amazing. You know, I don't love it does have a bit of a bubbly effect to it with like the butt of the knife, and which isn't a horrible thing. You know, you see it a lot in like something like the Griptilian has a similar type of shape in the butt end of the knife. I don't have anything wrong with it, but it's not exactly like, I don't think it draws me in or anything. I don't think the looks of the knife in general draw me in, but it does look like a very comfortable user, which is what drew me in originally. But the aesthetics definitely drew me in a bit, and just the overall look of it, and it just looked like something that would be a very good user. So that's what drew me in with it. Then of course the Ebony, this really did draw me in. Of course, you guys know, if you've been following my channel long enough, you know that I'm a carpenter by trade, or I was at least for 12 years, but it is part of me, just being a carpenter, working with wood a lot. So the Ebony scales definitely drew me in, and when I got them in hand, they didn't disappoint, let me put it that way. They definitely look great. The finish on them, they leave a little bit of the grain. You can see where it's sucked in. It's almost like they do a bit of a satin finish on this, and it's got that matteness, but it's also got the shiny effect, so we kind of call that a satin. And you can see where the finish kind of sucked into the grain a little bit, which isn't a horrible thing. I don't find anything wrong with that. I think it gives it that grain look, and it gives it more of the natural wood look to it. So I don't mind that some of that sucked in and they didn't, like sand it down again and then refinish it, so that they got rid of all those lines. They don't bother me. I actually kind of like it, but that's definitely my personal opinion. The wood, it's not going to come through here quite as good as in person. It does have a little bit of the blonde effect that Ebony has. You also get that with Wingay and stuff like that. Woods like this, African woods that are really dark, they'll have these white lines. It's almost like a lighter brown within the grain, and you can slightly see it here. You see it almost looks like discoloration. That's actually just the wood. It is the grain of the wood, and it does look great in person. I don't think it's not coming through perfectly, but you guys can see a little bit of that effect, and this is a fairly true perspective of what you're going to get. Although in the sun, like in direct sunlight, you're going to get even more of a you're just going to see more of that contrast between the two different colors in the grain. But really, really beautifully done. I do think I like the way that the liners kind of stand proud and give you a little bit more of that contour effect. I like that in some knives, and in this one they do it well. So overall, I really like the aesthetics. The blade grind is done well. It's got that satin grind line effect. You get a little bit of a different direction of the grind lines here and on the swedge. I do really dig the blade shape. Very simple drop point with the swedge. I like it. It's simple. And it does have a hollow grind, if you guys can see with the reflection there. There is a hollow grind on this. And again, I will say the blade steel is D2. But yeah, aesthetically, I really do dig the knife. And then as far as fit and finish is concerned, there wasn't a lot to complain about as far as fit and finish on this knife. It came, perfectly centered. There's a few little things here and there that we can notice. Just like little gaps in between the wood and the liners, but really well done for the most part. You don't see a lot of separation there. There's not a lot of spots I could even see that seam. But it's really well done overall. Not a lot I can complain about, but especially we're talking about right around $60 knife, so it's not going to be perfect, of course, guys. Even in knives that are a lot more expensive, you don't see perfection. A little bit of, a gap right there where you can see maybe when they countersunk that screw, just a little blowout on the wood, which when you're dealing with wood, natural materials, you're definitely going to deal with some of that. You can see it there too, a little bit of chipping around the hole, which there are things you can do to avoid that. As a finished carpenter, I found all the little tricks and stuff, but obviously in a knife this cheap, they're not going to be, going that crazy over little specifics like that. Overall, I think it's very well done. The fit and finish all around, the blade, grind, and everything is done really well. It couldn't be, I really don't have much to complain about. It's very well done. Everything's terminated very evenly. You can see the swedge is a little off. Got a little bit more on this side. It seems like there's a little bit of inconsistencies there, but again, guys, $60 knife. Very well done. And very consistent grind. Very even side to side. So, can't really complain about that. And then, of course, design, guys. This is where I'm going to get into the design of the knife. And this knife was designed well. This is done by the in-house team. There was not like a collaborative design or anything. And they did a really good job. This is kind of where I'm going to talk about this a little bit, but I'll bring it in and out. You guys can actually see where this design might have come from. We made this knife for Ferrum Forge and Drop about a year or two ago. They first made this knife for them, and you really do see a little bit of the design coming through. Even though there's definitely you guys can definitely see the differences in design. It's very similar, and I think if you're looking at the overall design, I think you're looking at a pretty much. They took this one and said, well, let's make some different changes to it so it's not an exact copy, and it makes a great knife. And they did a good job. I don't think they copied it too exactly, but you can definitely see where their design elements came in. Very, very similar designs here. But in saying that, I think they did a very good job, and they designed this well. I like the way they finished it out here. With the sharpening choil, not taking more than necessary out of the blade cutting edge to make like a finger choil. I think it's done well enough to where if you're going to get up here, you can if you need to, but most of all, you're just going to be in the designated handle area and not having to worry about cutting yourself on that or anything. And it's fairly comfortable up here, which is where I think most knives, if you're choked up, that's kind of how you are anyways. You don't generally go into a full hammer grip up there unless a knife specifically gives you the room to do so. I think with something like this, you can totally choke up and go into a hammer grip. But if they don't give you this designated area with some kind of guard on the blade, I think a lot of times it's a dangerous situation. So Design's done well, and I think overall this was really well done in design and execution. Going into the action of this knife, when I first got it out of box, it was really nice. Of course, this is the Apex pass around group, so people have already handled it, flipped it. So it's not like it's brand new out of box. There's definitely been some flipping going on, but you guys will see it definitely flips out nicely. I am doing a light switch here, and you do have to give it some oomph. If you limp finger it, it's not going to fire out. It's gonna fail, no doubt. It's very easy to fail, in fact. The detint on this is nothing near the backlash I had. The detint on the backlash, it's almost impossible to fail it unless you really, really try to. Whereas this, I can easily fail it. And as you can see, if I'm not actually giving it that good whip, it will fail. I don't really mind that, guys, but it's something to note. As a push button, it does fire well. You can definitely load up on it. I can thumb flip it, but I have to be more aggressive with it. Definitely have to give it some intent. But yeah, really good action. Very smooth, guys. Very smooth action. And the detent's not horrible. I'm not trying to say it is. Sucks it in nicely. Strong enough. Not gonna like flip out in your pocket, but you know, if I give it a good swing, it'll definitely fly out. Which most knives will, guys. I bet you this guy will even. Oh, see? That one's much harder, but the detent on this is much stronger. I'll get more into that. But the flipping action is really good overall. Very smooth. There was a little bit of grittiness to the bearings, which I dropped a little bit of oil in there. Just some KPL, like the really light stuff, because it does tend to travel very well when a knife's together like this. So I put a little bit of KPL, and it is very smooth now. It's not like a full drop shut type of action, but you know, you can easily shake it in. Very, very smooth. For a $60 knife, really not going to be complaining about that action at all. Definitely really, really nice action. In saying that, I will say that having this guy at the exact same time, the detent on this knife, you guys will see how much faster that flings out. It fires so much better. And if I didn't have this one at the exact same time, I might not have known, even like had any idea. But having this at the exact same time as that really made me kind of look at them both in the same vein, and it made this guy just look that much better as far as action was concerned. Just the deployment. As far as closing action, I will say they're very much more similar than the deployment, but there's just a smoothness to this guy that doesn't occur in this. This one is so much smoother. Just the action feel of the bearings on the knife. I don't know if that has to do with the S35 and the ceramic bearings against the blade. I believe they're both ceramic bearings, but man, the Gent is just that much smoother. So I don't know what that's about, but I will say that having this guy at the exact same time made this action seem a little less amazing. But moving on, I'll go into the blade. The blade is really well done, and I think that's where this guy kind of stands out. And what really, you know, I like to see is the blade grind. This is a hollow ground blade. This is what Civivi's been doing so well. It is really well done. And if there wasn't one element of this blade, let me just put it this way, guys. I would already have one of these if it wasn't for the one element of this blade. and that is the steel that they use. You guys know I'm just not a fan of D2, and it's because of the performance. But look at that, guys. 15 thousandths behind the edge. I did not sharpen this, obviously, with it being a... Ooh, there we go. 13 thousandths right there. Really impressive grind, guys. But obviously I didn't get to sharpen this, so I don't know what angle it's at. I believe it's right around 17 degrees per side. So 13 thousandths. Really impressive blade grind. And this is where it really stood out. 125 right there. So really, really well done. And I'm just so impressed by this knife in that sense, where the blade grind on these is done so well. And I wish more companies would take to that and start doing hollow grinds. This is just done so well, and it cuts so easily when I did do some cutting with it. But then, and this is where performance is going to come in, because it was the performance, guys, that really disappointed me. When I first got this guy out of box, I felt the edge. Just as you guys know, I sharpen a lot. I cut a lot. I'm always dealing with a lot of different types of steels. I have a pretty good gauge of how sharp something is just by doing this. Once I can feel the edge, I can pretty much tell you what it's going to perform like. Especially when it comes to like slicing paper or something like that. I can almost tell just by the feel of the edge how it's going to do. And when I first got this, it was really sticky. It had a really nice factory edge on it. I don't think any of the reviewers that touched it before me even cut with it, or they might have stropped it, but I don't think too many reviewers handled this before me. So I was actually impressed by how that edge felt sticky. And then with very little cutting, guys, I completely lost that stickiness, and it really started to feel dull. And that was where I was kind of unimpressed. I went ahead and stropped this guy. I started with 16 micron just to try and, give it that stickiness again. Started with the 16, went down all the way to about 3 micron. I think I ended with just the leather to see if it could pull back some of that stickiness to the apex, and it wasn't having it, guys. This D2, it's just not impressing me. Although it's going to go ahead and cut receipt paper, I'm sure. So it is cutting. It just completely lost that. There we go. It just lost that stickiness to the edge. So it's still totally paper slicing, and for a lot of people this is probably just fine. But for me, it just lost it too quick. I was just really unimpressed by how quickly it lost that stickiness. And also, it just wasn't coming back, which is why... I know I'm going to get a lot of flack here, and a lot of guys are going to go, oh, D2 is just great. It's just great. It's awesome. It's not, guys. I'm sorry. If you really use your stuff, yes, occasionally you'll get that crazy D2 that really performs excellently. And what that is probably it was the first knife closest to the nozzle or whatever it was. It was the one that got quenched right away from the heat treat and happened to get right in that sweet spot. All the other blades in that same heat treat got fucked. Sorry for the F-bomb there, guys, but it's just not the best steel for a production type of knife. I'm going to go ahead and link Outpost 76, Gerald's video he just did on D2. This is what we're talking about, guys. Just go watch that video if you got the time, and please go check that out, because it's just a lot of hype on D2, guys. And if we really look at its performance, and if you test it yourself, you guys can do these tests yourself at home, and you'll see what we're talking about. And you'll see that there's a lot of other steels that people give a bad rap just because they're older steels, or just because some reviewer said that steel's junk because he thinks that everything should have M390. Well, guess what, guys? why don't you test it yourself and see for yourself? Because a lot of VG10s and 12C27s and Oz 8s and all these other steels that get such a bad rap will perform a lot better than D2 if you actually test it and use your knives. So just because we think D2 is a better steel, just because it was an old steel and done well, D2 can do some really amazing things. It's not a production steel, guys. That's what we're trying to get at. So not anything wrong with D2 in the overall scheme of things. It's just as a production budget knife steel, it's not a good option. There's so many better options out there. That's what we've been getting at. So anyways, performance wise, I was super disappointed with this D2. And honestly, if this knife wasn't in D2, I would have already had one. It would have been on the way as I pulled this guy out of the box, because I really do overall love the knife. I think it's very well done. If this was 14C28N or even the 9CR MCR instead of the 8CR, I honestly thought that performed better than the D2 for me, at least in the knives I've gotten from Civivi. But of course, then again, I didn't get to sharpen this, so I can't really speak. You know, I'm going to have to get one and actually sharpen and test it to actually have a, you know, something to say about it. But just from my overall first impressions, I was super unimpressed with this D2. In saying that, the ergonomics of the knife were very, very comfortable. Again, guys, I have a 3 3/4 inch broad hand, 4 inches tall, and then 6 1/4 to 6 1/2 from this point to this point. And this knife fits very well in my hand, even in all the way back, not even choked up. I do get a 4-finger grip. It just barely fits inside where my pinky just kind of hangs on that outside there where that just rounds over. Very, very comfortable. I didn't get to do any like hard use necessarily with this knife, like pushing through a lot of material, but it, you know, what I did get to do, it felt super comfortable, and I didn't really find anything that would have become an issue. So I was very impressed with this knife ergonomically. The jimping's done so well. Just it's there, and if you push down, it's got some grip, but if you're just going over it, it's pretty smooth and it won't cause any issues. I really enjoy this jimping. I think it's done perfectly if you're gonna have jimping. So nicely done. Ergonomically, this knife is excellent. And then coming down to carry, the carry is excellent. You guys will definitely see this is a nice, deep carry. You know, wrap over type of almost like a spring clip there, but just that normal basic wrap over deep carry clip. The screws are recessed, so they don't really get caught on anything. It really just went in and out very, very nicely. It has a nice ramp on the front, good retention, and since it's up against a smooth handle surface, it goes in and out super easy. It does lean back a little bit in your pocket, and it has a very small flipper tab that does have a little bit of jimping there, guys. I will say that the flipper tab, definitely not going to slip off of it. I should have mentioned that in the action, but that jimping's done very well. And yeah, I really enjoyed that. Very nice. Oh, that's where you got your D2 printed, if you guys didn't see that before. Really nice touch, just being on the flipper tab there. Very, very subtle. I didn't talk about that. It does have like pretty much no billboarding at all. You got your Civivi there on the pivot, just your C, but everything else is super clean. I do like that about the aesthetics. I didn't talk about that, guys, sorry. But yeah, overall carry is really nice. I will bring in the, just really quick, just to show you guys what the weight is. I know I showed you in the specs, but see the reality. Yeah, 2.73, very, very nice carry, very great weight, and super comfortable to carry. Pretty much disappeared in the pocket. I did carry this in my 5th pocket, and it went really well even in the 5th pocket, even though it a little bit did stick up, but it stayed there nicely and worked well as like my secondary carry, which is how I kind of carry this guy. Really nice. So my overall impressions, guys, the conclusion of this knife, I think it was really well done. I think it was well thought out, well executed, very nice. And having this ebony one or even a micarta scale one would just be awesome. And I'm probably going to end up getting one eventually, just because I think it's a great knife for the price. It's just the D2, guys. I really am disappointed with Civivi moving pretty much all their budget knives over to D2. I know that this is what everybody's been asking for, so they're really just doing what everyone's asking for. And but for me personally, that's what's keeping me from buying this knife. Otherwise, I think it's so well done. I think it's really just a great option for the price. I don't think there's not a lot of knives out there I would say would beat it for the price, except for the steel. So I hope someone hears this. I hope Civivi gets away from that. The community's pushing them into going into D2. I think it's a mistake. I think even their 9CR was better. But, I mean, do some VG10. Do some, you know, I know VG10 and then everyone's going to bitch about VG10. But if you actually used your knives, go watch that video from Gerald. And you'll see the VG10, the working edge outperforms a lot of M390 knives in production. So, oh, guys, I think it's just people need to use their stuff more and stop just taking what one reviewer says and just spewing a bunch of misinformation. But in saying that, I think it's a very well done knife. If I didn't have this guy at the exact same time, I would have said this guy has just such a smoking action. It was just that this guy, which is a more expensive knife, I think these were about, you know, $100, and but the actions, I mean, you can't even compare. The action on this guy is just that much more snappy, that much smoother on the bearings. But in saying that, for the price, man, it's a pretty close comparison. And about $40 cheaper originally. Although I got this guy for like $40 with the, I forget all the different, these were on sale for the holidays and stuff. So I got a smoking deal on this guy. But otherwise, normal pricing, this is a great option for the price. And I don't think you can really go wrong. And I don't want to tell anybody that loves their Elementum that it's not a good knife, because it is. It's just this steel that could have made a much better knife. But again, my opinion, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it came off the right way. And I hope it brought you guys some value. So thanks a lot for watching. Have a great day. Thanks again to the Apex Pass Around group for letting me be part of it, although I know I'm Mr. Negative sometimes. Yeah, have a great day, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.